Hey there. So there's a lot of different options when it comes to sizes when you want to buy an amp, okay? You know, you can go down to little practice amps like 10 watts, 25 watts. Maybe you want to go for your first gig and you upgrade to a 50 watt. Or maybe you're playing at stadiums and you get a 100 or 200 watt one or even more than that to really just belt stuff out. But we're not going to worry about that stadium stuff because in this video I'm going to go through the 3 most common sizes of amps for beginners, okay? That's 10 watt, 25 watt and 50 watt amps, and we're going to decide which one is best for you. Alright, let's get into it. Okay, we're going to start off small with this little 10 watt amp that my dad gave me with my guitar. This is a little RMS guitar amplifier. It's 10 watts. And this is really fairly bottom of the barrel as far as amps go. It's nothing special, but it certainly gets the job done. Now this amp in particular has a volume, bass, and treble knob with a drive button. It's got an on and off switch, thing for headphones. This is like a 1/4-inch jack or whatever you call it, like the bigger headphones, right? If you have like more studio ones, I guess. And we also have, obviously, an input jack. You need one of those. Now this is the first amp that I ever really played on. It's perfectly fine for practicing and everything. So when it comes to amp sizes and everything like that, 10 watts is definitely for your at-home practice when you're just starting out. You don't really want to disturb anyone as far as noise goes. These are perfect for maybe if you're traveling a lot, or if you want to start small just to practice with, to get you confident in your playing before you upgrade to bigger sizes and making bigger, more louder noises. Now, amps this size usually don't come with many features built in. You won't really find many chorus or flanger effects or like any inbuilt effects in things like this, especially if you're going cheaper. The closest alternative, I guess, that I can think to this is probably a Fender Frontman 10G or something like that. That's also a beginner amp targeted towards the same kind of audience that you get this for. Now, I can't really speak to this amp's quality because I just got this for free and it was what I used. And I upgraded pretty quick and my friend let me borrow his orange 25 watt amp, which is also what I'm going to show you next. But let's plug this in and I'll show you some of the tones you can get out of this thing. Okay, next on the list, 25 watt. Now this is my little 25 watt amp that my friend has kind of indefinitely lent me. I should probably give it back to him someday. But this is an Orange Crush 20 LDX. Now, when you're starting out, I can absolutely recommend this thing. This is surprisingly good for what it is. This has a bunch of inbuilt effects into it. God, this is really grimy on top. I'm going to clean this off and show you guys. Now, I don't know if you can see that there, but down the bottom left there's FX mode and FX level, because this amp comes with a bunch of effects built in. Basically, you can switch to one of the many options it has there for different effects, and then change how much of that effect you want pretty much. It's really, really good actually, especially when you're starting out and you can't afford to buy a different bunch of like pedals and everything like that. This is great for starting out if you want to experiment with different effects. Now, for a 25 watt, you can expect to get a fair bit louder than a 10 watt. Over double the loudness, really, if you do the math. Now, I've used this for ages. When I first got it, this was the only amp that I used, and I let my friends and stuff borrow the 10 watt before I got my bigger one. And it's really a great option when you're starting out. I think this is personally the perfect middle ground between being able to do gigs and home practice. I think this is great for home practice if you want to start, using pedals, start using effects, start really dialing in your tone and everything like that, what you want out of a guitar. This is great for starting to do that because it has the treble, middle, and bass options, which for some reason a lot of amps just don't have that mids option. It's just treble and bass, as you saw in the other 10 watt amp. But surprisingly enough, a lot of more expensive amps also don't have the mids option as well. Maybe it's just an old, traditional thing that they have sort of, kept over. I don't know. But either way, this is a great starting amp. So let's plug this in and see the tones you can get out of this. And next, which is my newest addition to the collection, is my Fender Mustang LT50. This is a 50 watt amp. Now I bought this off a friend secondhand, so I got it for a bit cheaper than your retail price, but this starts to get a little bit more expensive, especially for beginner amps. But, in my opinion, it was totally worth it, because this thing is just amazing as far as making tones, and it can definitely get loud enough that if you want to go out for your first gigs, you can use this up on stage in like a bar or something like that, and it'll fill the room easily. This thing takes pedals surprisingly well, and in my opinion is really one of the best options for starting out if you want to spend a little bit more money on an amp. Now, because it's a Mustang, it has the different presets that you can put a bunch of different like effects and everything like that and choose exactly how you want your tone to sound, and you can use the dial on top to change like what preset you're using. It is super great, and I think getting a Mustang amp like this is the best option for beginners if you don't want to spend the money to buy extra pedals. If you want to use effects that you know are going to sound good and are going to work with the amp well, the Mustangs are great for that. But of course there are a few drawbacks. Of course, number one being that they're a little bit more expensive than your other beginner range kind of amps. It's still pretty cheap in the grand scheme of things. I think it's a bit over 500 Australian dollars, which turns out to be around 250, 300 US dollars. I'm going to say around 300 US dollars. So when you're first starting out, that might be a little bit out of your price bracket for, one bit of gear, which I totally understand. All of my guitars are either secondhand, I've got for a reduced price when I've traded in another guitar, or I've got off a friend or something like that. So, I totally understand price being an issue. I'm a broke ass bitch. I accidentally did a major instead of a minor chord there before. So now that we've gone through the 3 amps that are going to be contending today, what do I recommend for each type of person? Let's start off with the 10 watt amp. I think that 10 watts is honestly not as versatile as you would want. It's great if you're just in your bedroom practicing and all you want to do is just play guitar and get sound out of it. They are great for that. For when you're just beginning and you're practicing chords and trying to learn a couple different songs and you don't want to get your tone perfect or sounding exactly like the record, I mean, it's perfect for that kind of thing. When you're a very beginner, just practicing, or if you want a really small portable amp that you can take around with you. There's also those positive grid sparks or whatever they're called, like the positive grid amps that are super portable and chargeable. So if you want one for traveling, a battery powered one would also be great because they can get a little bit smaller. They're basically just like a Bluetooth speaker that you connect your guitar to, so those work great, although I haven't used them myself. I've heard they're pretty good. But all things considered, unless you're a very beginner guitarist or you're really worried about the noise it's going to make, then I wouldn't really recommend a 10 watt unless it's a price issue, because if you are wanting to get something really cheap that'll just do the job until you can afford something better, 10 watts is absolutely great to start with. I think 25 watt is probably the best middle ground for when you're starting out. These amps are usually a little bit more expensive, not by too much, but they'll bring with them a lot more features. A lot of the time they'll have a knob for EQ in the mids, which, the smaller ones usually don't. These ones can come with effects and everything like that. They'll take pedals better than the smaller ones, and overall they'll just be louder and you can dial in your tone exactly how you want it. It's a little bit easier with the bigger speakers. They're not too loud to the point where if you crank it up, you'll be able to use it for a gig, really. I mean, you probably could if it was a small bar or something like that, but it's not something that you'd really be able to gig with, but it's perfect for if you want to do your own home recordings or if you want to just practice in your room with a bit more oomph. I could see someone sticking with a 25 watt amp for a long time before they get good enough to be confident to go and gig. And yeah, I haven't had too much experience with other 25 watt or like smaller amps, but that Orange Crush LDX 25 or whatever it's called is really good from my experience. I can absolutely recommend it. Orange makes some great amps. Now next for the 50 watt. This is pretty much the ultimate beginner's amp as far as wattage and loudness and usually features goes. If you're going for like a 50 or even a 40 watt amp, if you want to go for like a Fender Champion 40 or something like that, those are great amps too. These are great because you can dial them down quiet enough to the point where they're great for room practicing. They usually take pedals better. They, like the Mustangs, they have a lot of inbuilt presets and effects and everything that you can use, which is great. These will carry you through for a long time and will take you through your first gigs. You can crank these up, they sound great, and in my opinion, if you're willing to spend the extra money, they are well worth the cost. Now to end the video, I'm going to take you through all 3 of them side by side. All of the EQ is pointing straight up to try and, get as even of a tone between them as possible. And you're going to see the sound difference yourself. Alright, let's get into it. So as you can probably hear, the lower in wattage you go, usually you're losing some clarity and some depth that you get in the bigger amps. I think the Mustang was overall the best sounding and obviously the most tweakable to sound however you like. It has the most bass and depth and just area to change than the other amps do. As I went down, you can see a big jump to the Orange. Everything was straight up in the EQ, but it sounded a lot more thin. Now, it does sound good, I think, and I think that all of the amps sound good and have their own application, but there's just a lot less versatility the lower down you go. Just because the sound isn't as open and big and you can't actually tweak everything exactly to how you like it. Of course, this will get even better the bigger amps that you go, like the Marshalls and everything that you can get are amazing. So yeah, I hope this helped. If it did, please remember to subscribe and hit the like button, and if you want to support me monetarily, I've got links down in the description, but that's not necessary, of course. Up to you. If you have some spare extra change, it'll go directly back into this channel to buy new gear and upgrade stuff to give you guys better videos. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, give it a like. If you didn't, give it a dislike. And I'll see you all in the next video. Peace out. Did I say peace out? What the fuck?